There's a special kind of arrogance that blooms when someone holds a clipboard and starts calling themselves president. Not a real one, not of a country or even a PDA. No, I mean the kind of president who rules over mulch regulations and driveway stain colors. Enter the Oak Creek Pines HOA. Sounds fancy, right? Like a place where golden retrievers frolic on manicured lawns and everyone smiles in slow motion. In reality, it's a suburban Hunger Games, and the strongest tribute is a woman named Carol who treats HOA power like it's a full-time job with dental. For context, I live on a small lot that borders the HOA's kingdom. My property, not a part of it. Never signed anything, never paid dues, and most importantly, never gave them permission to exist in my world. But because my land sits right next to their community lot, a cracked slab of pavement they call a guest parking area, we've coexisted in a delicate Cold War. Until my truck tipped the balance. See, I've got this old Dodge Ram. It's not pretty. Faded red, a dent in the bumper from an unfortunate encounter with a runaway shopping cart, and a radio that only plays static and early 2000s country. But it runs. And more importantly, it fits perfectly on the strip of gravel I've parked on for the last 7 years. Let me emphasize, that gravel is on my land. Or so I thought everyone understood. Until one morning, I found a neon green flyer under my wiper that screamed, "Notice of parking violation, unauthorized use of HOA property. This area is designated for HOA community parking only. Unauthorized vehicles will be towed at owner's expense." It was signed, Carol M., HOA President and Community Standards Chair. She gave herself 2 titles. That's how you know she's serious. At first, I laughed. I assumed it was a mistake. Maybe Carol's bifocals fogged up mid-map. So I took a picture of the flyer, tossed it in the glove box, and moved on with my day. Big mistake. 3 days later, there were 2 more flyers. One duct taped to my driver's side mirror like some sort of twisted parking ransom note. The second one was bolder. Final warning. Your vehicle is in violation of community parking limitations. If not removed within 48 hours, towing will commence. Oh, now they were escalating. How cute. And then the kicker, a cheerful little line at the bottom in italics. This notice serves as formal documentation. No further warnings will be issued. Chills, right? That's when I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was an eviction. Not from my home. No, that would require legal grounds. This was an attempted removal from my own land by people who didn't even own it. The audacity, the gall, the clipboard energy. Here's where it gets better. See, that gravel area I park on. It's not shared space. It's a carved-out triangle of land that's technically part of my lot, grandfathered in from when my property existed before Oak Creek Pines was even an idea scribbled in a developer's spiral notebook. But over the years, the HOA began quietly using it as overflow parking, mostly when they had one of their thrilling wine and weed control Wednesdays or mandatory mulch mullets, or whatever else they do over there. And since I never raised a fuss about a few sedans using the far corner once in a while, they just assumed it was theirs. Fast forward to now, when parking's getting tight, and suddenly I'm the outsider taking up their space. Spoiler alert, I wasn't the one trespassing. They were. So, I did what any reasonable person would do. I pulled the deed, the survey, the boundary map, highlighted the coordinates of my property lines in highlighter yellow so aggressive it could blind a bat. Then I printed them out and taped them to a post, right where my truck sits, with a sign that said, "Private property, park at your own risk and legal liability. P.S. Carol, you should have read the plat map." And I waited. The very next morning, I looked out my window with my coffee and saw her. Carol, marching up with her clipboard like it was the Constitution. She stood in front of my sign, hands on hips, lips pursed like she just tasted skim milk by mistake. Then she whipped out her phone and started taking pictures of the sign, the truck, my mailbox, the sky, as if she was preparing to sue a cumulonimbus cloud for trespassing. Then she walked over, knocked on my door, and gave me her best condescending voice. "You can't just claim that land is yours because you put up a sign." I smiled. The slow, smug kind that says I've got more receipts than you have rules. "I didn't claim it," I said. I bought it back in 2015, along with the gravel, the weeds, and every inch your board's been pretending belongs to them. Carol blinked. That threw her. We've always used that lot, she snapped. And now you won't, I replied. Funny how property ownership works. The war had begun. They didn't know it yet, but the parking party was about to end, permanently, because they came for my truck, and they forgot to check whose land it was sitting on. I wish I could say Carol backed off after our little doorstep showdown, that she went home, consulted a map, realized she'd been parking on someone else's land for the better part of a decade, and sent over a plate of apology muffins. But no, that would require humility, and possibly a soul. Instead, Carol did what any clipboard-wielding tyrant would do when challenged by facts. She doubled down. Hard. 3 days after our confrontation, a new notice showed up. Not under my windshield this time. Oh no. This one was certified mail, like I was being summoned to HOA court, which, by the way, is not a real thing, no matter how dramatic the envelope looks. Inside was a 2-page letter full of words like abandonment, encroachment, and misuse of communal resources. That's right. She'd upgraded my perfectly parked, tax-paying Dodge Ram into a criminal trespasser. The highlight, though, was the closing line. If the vehicle is not removed by Thursday at noon, the HOA will take corrective action, including but not limited to the engagement of municipal towing services. Municipal towing services. Like the city was going to roll in with sirens blazing and drag my truck off the land I pay taxes on. I had to sit down. I was laughing so hard. See, there's something deeply satisfying about watching someone charge into battle without realizing they're swinging a pool noodle. Carol had no clue what she was stepping into. I've worked in construction and civil planning for a decade. I've stood in courtrooms arguing zoning cases. I've redlined maps that city planners use to decide where sidewalks go. And now this HOA thinks they're going to tow a vehicle off my land because it looks like it's part of their parking lot. Girl. So I did the logical thing. I called their bluff. Literally. I called the number listed for their towing partner, apparently a company called Fast Tow Solutions, which, based on the quality of their website, Comic Sans again, and the fact that their Google reviews had more 1 stars than a Twilight sequel, was about as legit as a $3 bill. Hi, I said sweetly. I'm calling because the Oak Creek Pines HOA has threatened to have my vehicle towed, but the land they want to tow it from is mine. Just wanted to save y'all a legal headache before you roll up. Silence. Then, from the tow guy, wait, they don't own the property. Nope, not even close. Want a PDF of the survey? He passed me off to his manager in under 2 seconds. I sent the survey. They thanked me. And most importantly, they bailed. Fast Tow Solutions was not interested in being dragged into a turf war between a clipboard commander and an unbothered landowner with receipts. But I wasn't done, because now I had a plan. If Carol wanted to treat my land like it was part of her HOA amusement park, I was going to make it very, very clear that it wasn't. Step 1. Fencing. Not a huge wall or anything. I wasn't trying to start a Cold War reenactment. Just a nice, tasteful split-rail fence around the gravel area, with 1 break in it, just wide enough for my truck to enter. I even installed a little wooden sign at the entrance that read, "Private parking for the owner of this land. Spoiler, not Carol." In cursive, because I'm classy like that. The day the fence went up, Carol had what I can only describe as a public existential crisis. She marched down the street, HOA posse in tow, which included 1 guy holding a clipboard, 1 woman live streaming, and a 3rd person who honestly just looked lost, and stood outside my new fence with her arms crossed so hard I thought she might dislocate a shoulder. "You're creating division in the community," she barked through the rails. I nodded thoughtfully. "No, I'm just highlighting it. You guys created it years ago. I just finally put up borders." She gestured wildly at the gravel. "That lot has always been community used." "Cool," I said. "So has my microwave. But if you try to cook a hot pocket in it, I'm still calling the cops." I went inside. Let them huff and puff out there for a while. And from the window, I watched as one of the HOA followers, a newer guy, Steve or Stan or something, pulled Carol aside. He pointed at the land survey, still posted near the sign, and said something that made her frown even deeper. I imagine it was something like, "Carol, what if we're wrong?" But Carol doesn't do wrong. She only does louder. Which is how we got to the HOA emergency meeting of parking protocols and property use policy clarification. Yes, that was the actual subject line. I RSVP'd. With popcorn. They held it the following Saturday at the community clubhouse, which, mind you, I'm not allowed to use because non-members can't rent the space. That didn't stop me from showing up, sitting in the back row with my copy of the county parcel map like it was the 10 Commandments, and sipping from a travel mug that may or may not have said, HOA stands for Hell on Asphalt. Carol took the stage like a dictator addressing a nervous empire. We've had some confusion regarding the use of the eastern gravel lot, she began, like it was a weather forecast instead of a full-blown scandal. But we believe that unity requires cooperation, and that land, though historically communal, must reflect the values of our neighborhood. Does it also need to reflect ownership? I asked, raising my hand with the biggest, fakest smile. She ignored me, but the room didn't. People started whispering. Murmurs. Side eyes. Even her clipboard crew was looking uneasy. And that's when I knew I wasn't just holding the line anymore. I was about to take back the whole damn parking lot narrative. If you've never watched an entire HOA board slowly realize they're on the wrong side of a property dispute, I highly recommend it. There's a moment, a shift in the air. The clipboard starts shaking. Someone coughs awkwardly. A board member fidgets with their vice chair of community pet etiquette badge like it suddenly weighs 1,000 pounds. And at that emergency meeting, right there under the buzzing fluorescent lights of the community clubhouse, I watched Carol's kingdom start to crack. After she gave her speech about unity and the need for visual harmony, she moved to the next item on the agenda. A motion to enforce parking restrictions on all lots adjacent to HOA property. No one said anything at first. Then Stan, the one board member with enough common sense to Google property rights, cleared his throat. I just want to confirm, he said, his voice careful like he was poking a bear with a foam noodle. We are absolutely sure that gravel lot is within our HOA jurisdiction, right? Carol's smile didn't move. But her eye did that twitchy thing it does when someone brings facts to her fantasy land. Yes, it has always been used by the HOA, she replied. That constitutes communal precedent. You could practically hear the record scratch. Is that a legal thing? Someone from the audience asked. I couldn't help myself. I raised my hand like I was in a classroom. Hi, just a heads up, precedent doesn't override deeded ownership. I've got the plat map right here. The gravel lot is part of my parcel. You can use it with permission. You can't claim it. I could see Carol trying to calculate whether she could file a restraining order against a map. After the meeting, the HOA was fractured. Stan emailed me later that night. Said he resigned from the board. Told me, and I quote, I didn't realize I joined a homeowners association to fight a civil war over gravel. I respected it. But Carol? She was not going quietly. A few days later, she sent an email blast to the entire HOA. Parking situation, community discussion requested. Due to unresolved legal boundaries on the gravel parcel, all residents are asked to refrain from parking on or near the disputed area. In the meantime, alternative parking strategies will be developed by the board. She even used a phrase I never thought I'd hear outside of a courtroom. Pending land control determination. Land control determination. For property I literally pay taxes on. Lady, I'm not NATO. Then, the real chaos began. Because with my land off limits, the guest parking overflow disappeared overnight. HOA residents, suddenly short 10 to 12 spots, began to turn on each other faster than you can say your Camry is too close to my hydrangeas. People parked on curbs, lawns. One guy tried to parallel park behind a fire hydrant, then left a sticky note that said desperate times. The HOA Facebook group imploded. My favorite thread went like this. Carol, let's stay calm and respectful while we adjust to this minor change. Janice, then why did you threaten to tow someone off land you don't even own? Carol, this isn't about ownership. It's about community spirit. Dave, a legend, Your community spirit cost me a sprained ankle because I had to park 2 blocks away and walk through a sprinkler. Beautiful. And me? I was thriving. With the fence up and my truck parked like a smug, metal monument to HOA overreach, I leaned all the way into the role of neighborhood menace. I installed a motion-activated speaker that played a ding sound every time someone walked near the gravel. I planted a few flower beds around the border, just so it looked more like a sanctuary and less like a war zone. Added a little sign that said, "Now leasing, parking spots on private land, starting at $400 per month." Kidding, unless you're Carol. Then came the cherry on top. A local reporter, small town paper, but hungry for a story, caught wind of the HOA parking war after Janice spilled the tea on Facebook. He called me for an interview. I gave him everything: the deed, the map, copies of Carol's threats. And yes, a quote. "I don't mind neighbors using my land. I mind when they try to steal it with clipboards and bad attitude." The article dropped 3 days later. Parking lot plot twist. Local HOA demands land they don't own. It came with a photo of me, standing next to my truck with one hand on the private property sign and the smuggest look you've ever seen. It was my Mona Lisa moment. The HOA board held another emergency meeting that weekend. I didn't attend. I didn't have to. They sent a letter 2 days later. The Oak Creek Pines HOA formally acknowledges that the parcel is privately owned and falls outside the governance of the HOA. We apologize for any confusion and will ensure no further parking or enforcement actions take place on said land. Signed, Carol M., with one less title beneath her name. The war was over. The lot was mine. And Carol? She'd be lucky if she could enforce a lemonade stand after this. But oh, we're not done yet. Because Carol's clipboard still had one last act. And I was ready for it. You'd think after a public dragging in the local paper, a resignation from her own board, and being legally outmaneuvered by a guy in flip-flops, Carol would hang up the clipboard and ride off into the HOA sunset. But no, some people learn lessons. Carol? She files appeals. It started subtly. A note in the HOA newsletter, which I still get, uninvited. "Thanks, Janet," that read. "While certain land remains outside our jurisdiction, we encourage residents to be mindful of the overall atmosphere and tone of the community." Tone. A word you use when you've run out of rules and you're just trying to police vibes now. But it didn't stop there. One evening, I found 2 women pacing along my new fence line, both wearing Oak Creek Pines branded windbreakers, which, I assume, you get after completing 5 successful passive-aggressive missions. They were taking notes. One had a tape measure. The other had a level. They looked like they were planning to file a structural critique of my gravel. So I waited. And sure enough, 3 days later, another certified letter. This one wasn't from the HOA directly. It was from a firm called Community Harmony Consulting, which sounds like a front for emotional manipulation. The letter read, "We've received concerns from the Oak Creek Pines HOA regarding your property's alignment with the visual integrity of the neighborhood. While we acknowledge the parcel is private, we are conducting a review to determine its impact on the aesthetic standards upheld by adjacent properties." I stared at it for a full minute. Impact on the aesthetic standards. They were now accusing my truck of ruining their vibes. It was beautiful, unhinged, almost artistic. So I invited them in. Not into my house, of course, into a public forum. Specifically, the HOA's monthly open floor meeting, which I hadn't bothered attending since my victory. But this time, I showed up. I brought a poster board. On it was a blown-up screenshot of Carol's original email, where she demanded I remove my vehicle from HOA property. Below that, my deed, with the land boundaries highlighted in aggressive neon pink. Below that, the article from the newspaper, framed, laminated, and stuck to the board with little gold star stickers. Visual aids are important for closure. Carol didn't speak for the first 10 minutes. Just sat there, lips pursed, eyes locked on me like she was trying to set my clothes on fire with the power of HOA rage. Then, finally, she stood. "I just want to ask," she said, voice tight, "if it's truly necessary to keep flaunting this." The room went quiet. So I stood up too. "Flaunting?" I said. "Carol, I'm not flaunting. I'm defending. There's a difference. You tried to tow my truck off land I own. You threatened legal action. You dragged your HOA into a war they couldn't win. And now that the dust settled, you're mad that I framed the receipts? There was a beat. Then someone in the back, I think it was Dave, clapped. Just once. Loud. Pointed. Then Linda joined in. Then Stan. Then it turned into a full-on standing ovation, complete with someone whistling and another guy yelling, "Tell her," like we were in a courtroom drama. Carol sat down. Fast. After that, things changed. Not immediately. Clipboard culture runs deep, but the atmosphere shifted. HOA meetings got shorter. Friendlier. The new board president, not Carol, obviously, she stepped down a week later for personal reasons, which I assume involved an identity crisis and a Pinterest board titled, "Who Am I Without My Power?" actually spoke to me at a neighborhood barbecue. He asked if I'd consider letting them rent part of the lot, for actual money, during HOA events. I told him I'd think about it. I won't. Now, my truck sits in its rightful spot every day, basking in the sun like a war hero on retirement leave. The fence stands firm. The sign's still up. And the flowers I planted? They've started to bloom. Red, yellow, and one bright petty purple. As for Carol, she still lives 3 houses down. She walks by sometimes. Slower now. No clipboard. No posse. Just a woman humbled by a Dodge Ram and a property line she should have Googled. She doesn't make eye contact anymore. But one morning, I caught her pause at the edge of the gravel. She looked at the sign. Then she looked at the flowers. And she sighed. A long, defeated sigh. It was better than any apology. You'd think after everything, the towing threats, the clipboard crusade, the aesthetic shaming, I'd be ready to move on. To forgive. To forget. To embrace neighborhood unity like a Hallmark movie third act. But nah, I'm not a villain. I'm just a guy who remembers. And I believe in 2 things, property rights and long-term strategic pettiness. Things had quieted down, sure. With Carol out and the HOA humbled, peace returned to Oak Creek Pines. A fragile peace. The kind where people still smile a little too tightly and trim their hedges just a little too evenly, like they're waiting for someone to snap. I'd become something of a legend in the neighborhood. Linda started calling me the Gravel King. Dave asked if I'd run for the board. I declined, not trying to spend Tuesday nights arguing about shrub height. Even Janice, the Facebook firestarter, offered to start a petition to get my truck its own honorary plaque. I told her give it time. I'm patient. I did make some upgrades, though. My truck now has a little roof over it. Nothing crazy, just a simple carport that matches the trim of my house. Built it myself. Painted it HOA-compliant beige, just to be spicy. On the front beam, a hand-carved wooden sign that reads, "Designated survivor of the parking war of 25. Tourists, read, boardwalkers with dogs, stop and take pictures." Somehow, I've become the patron saint of reasonable landowners. But I wasn't done yet, because I had one more loose end to tie up. After the war, I looked back over the documents, the letters, the unhinged flyers, and I realized these people had no idea how close they came to committing actual property crimes. Towing someone's vehicle off their own land? That's not just rude. That's illegal. And while I had no interest in suing Carol, mostly because I doubt she has enough in her savings account to cover a reprinted deed, I did want protection in case this ever happened again. So I made a call. To a lawyer. Just in case, he asked. Exactly, I said. I want a formal cease and desist letter ready to go. A real one. With embossed headers and words like injunctive relief. Something that says, try this again, and we're skipping straight to court. He grinned. You want to preemptively go nuclear? No, I said. I just want the nukes visible. He laughed, and 3 days later, I had it. A beautiful, threatening legal letter, quietly filed and ready to drop if Carol, or anyone else, ever decided my land was community seating again. I also made a copy and laminated it. It lives in my glove box now, next to the original flyer that started it all. Because I remember. Spring came. The flowers I planted around the gravel lot exploded into color. People complimented them. Carol didn't. She walks faster now when she passes my property. And the funniest thing? Ever since she stepped down, the HOA has been kind of chill. They don't bother anyone. They send normal emails about trash days and block parties. They even approved Linda's gnome army without a single passive-aggressive remark. It's like once the tyrant fell, the rest remembered that living in a neighborhood is supposed to be nice. One quiet Sunday morning, I sat on my porch, coffee in hand, watching the sun hit the hood of my truck just right, like it was glowing in a lens flare of righteousness. And that's when it hit me. I had won. Not just the battle. Not just the land war. I'd restored balance. And while I don't go looking for fights, I also don't back down when someone decides their HOA rules override my property deed. So now, I wait. Because if the next clipboard warrior ever rises, they'll find the fences still up, the land still mine, and the truck still parked, exactly where it belongs. Thank you for being with us. Please share in the comments where you are watching from and whether you liked everything, and see you next time.